Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Firewalls Don't Stop Dragons. I'm your host, Gary Parker. Today we have episode 489 for July 13th, 2026. And today I'm officially announcing the countdown to 500. We're getting very close. It's only about 76 days away. And the reason I know that is because I've got a really nice countdown timer on the brand new FDSD500.com website. So I'm officially launching that today. It's actually been there for a little while, but nobody knew about it till now. So if you want to follow the goings-on and check on the countdown clock, go check out FDSD500.com. There's some other stuff that will be showing up there over time. Keep an eye on it. You might want to go back periodically. But the bottom line is I'm officially starting the countdown, and I've got some interesting things to tell you about, and they will be tied in with the tip of the week. So make sure you hang on for that. But today we have a news show for you. Got lots of topics to cover. Before we get into the details, I will give you just a few quick headline kind of things. DFlock, that's the website that is against Flock, the automated license plate reader cameras, has launched a national week of action against ALPRs, automatic license plate readers. You can go to noalprs.com. There is a link in the show notes. And it's going to be in August, so you've got some time to check it out. But if this is something that is going up in your community and you don't like it, this is a great resource. And now there's even a dedicated week for you to take some action about that. Also, I was going to read a story about Meta wanting to add a feature that would allow people to use your public Instagram pictures to do generative AI stuff without your approval, and because it's on by default, you'd have to go find the setting and turn it off. Well, in just the few days since that article came out about this new feature, there was a big backlash, and so they removed this feature. If it comes back, I will let you know. And then finally, I really wanted to read an article from Wired about some security exercises run by a friend of the show, Josh Corman, that talked about what would happen if water facilities were unavailable. And this is something we've talked about a lot on the show, something I want to make sure we kind of keep to the front of our attention. And so I really wanted to read it, but it's a very long article, and it was really kind of hard to trim it down to something bite-sized. So there is a link in the show notes. I encourage you to read it. Josh Corman was prominently featured in the article, but we've talked to Josh about this. We've also talked to the Cyber Resilience Corps and Jake Braun from the DEF CON Franklin group. I covered this a lot last year, but it's still a thing. It's still an important thing. So I encourage you to go and read that article if you get a chance. This is an important thing, and this is actually part of what's going to be behind my campaign for the 500th episode. But again, I'll get back to that in the tip of the week. All right, so we have a new show for you today. We're going to talk about chat control. It is back in kind of a weird, underhanded kind of way. Apple's Hide My Email has a bug that apparently will let you figure out what the person's real email is. That's not good. Meta has patented an AI device that tracks your emotions and watches when you take your meds and listens to how you sigh, among other things. The Intercept Signal tip line username was hijacked for months. Papa John's can now predict when your fridge is empty and you might want a pizza. Opera browser has a new security feature that is designed to help stop the ClickFix malware campaign, which has gotten very, very popular. Google has disrupted another residential proxy network. John Deere has been forced to allow their customers to repair their machinery in a really big win for the right to repair. And another big win, right on the heels of our interview with Nate Wessler from the ACLU about location tracking, the Supreme Court has ruled that cell phone location histories are protected by the Fourth Amendment. So we'll talk about the implications of that. And then finally, my tip of the week. So let's get to it. All right, first up, chat control. We've talked about this off and on. This is an EU law regulation that would allow for scanning of material on your devices, ostensibly to fight child sexual abuse material. But of course, it has lots of knock-on effects. And there was a big vote last week, sort of. I don't know. These things are so weird. But so let me just read the article, which will explain it, and then we'll talk. So this is from Tom's Hardware. It says, the Chat Control 1.0 law that enables warrantless mass scanning of digital communications has been voted against multiple times by the EU Parliament. And yet, just like a movie zombie, it keeps getting resurrected by various legal sleight-of-hand moves. Yesterday, and this is last week, one of those tricks worked as the Chat Control 1.0 passed, or rather was not rejected, in a forced revote that required an absolute majority, 50% plus one, for active refusal. This brings back the law until 2028 and sets a different stage for September's upcoming discussion on Chat Control 2.0. After the impending publication in the EU Office Journal, online direct communication platforms will be allowed to mass scan their users' data without the need for a warrant, under the guise of looking for child sexual abuse material, or CSAM. The scanning is not mandatory, but big tech firms will have a legal mechanism to rifle through user data. EU firms have historically refrained from doing so, presenting privacy and data sovereignty as selling points, but the legal door is nevertheless now officially open. The obvious platforms where monitoring can now take place will be email and chat services. Immediate examples include Gmail, iCloud, Hotmail, Discord, Instagram, Slack, Teams, Snapchat, Xbox, and Google Chat. Although the law's scope is for interpersonal communication services, the legal mechanism might hypothetically extend to some gray areas like Google Drive, where sending someone a link to a cloud file could be within the scope of the law. It's worth noting that direct communication isn't restricted to one-to-one chats, as it includes group chats, not just public or undirected communications. Additionally, EU law enforcement is still beholden to the same warrant requirements as before. Chat Control 1.0 does not grant a blank pass to authorities to mass scan user data or request companies to do so without a targeted warrant. Thanks to two amendments in yesterday's vote, end-to-end encrypted communication means stay exempt. That means that for now, Chat Control 1.0 isn't a commandment to break encryption, something that has been regularly suggested by lawmakers around the world. It's as good a time as any to remind people that Instagram messages are no longer end-to-end encrypted as of May, and that although WhatsApp's messages are encrypted, the service leaks out every single bit of metadata about them: sender, recipient, time, size, etc. As always, Signal is recommended as a privacy-focused communications app. The latest development in the EU Parliament is eliciting widespread public outcry due to the nature of the law itself, but also due to the manner in which it happened. Critics and opponents of the rule are suggesting this move is unprecedented. Chat Control 1.0 has already been shot down repeatedly, most recently in March. However, European Parliament President Roberta Metsola forced a second reading of the law and invoked Rule 163's urgent procedure mechanism. This has many effects, including bringing up a law that was voted against for discussion yet again, turning the decision into a denial vote to deny, not vote to pass, exploiting the second reading requirement that demands an absolute majority, 50% plus one, and letting the president herself set the schedule. Metsola scheduled the second reading to the very last day before the European Parliament's summer recess. The result was that out of 720 representatives, only 607 actually cast a vote. Of those, 315, over half, voted against Chat Control 1.0. That figure did not meet the supermajority threshold of 361, which was calculated against a full chamber. Opponents to Chat Control have posted resources at the Fight Chat Control website, and that's a link, including a breakdown of the member state and individual representative voting positions and contact information. So, yeah, that was super sneaky and goes against the whole spirit of democracy, honestly. So it was a really underhanded move, and it succeeded. So if you're in the EU, contact your representatives. There'll be a big vote coming up again in September on Chat Control 2.0, and we really need to stop this mass surveillance campaign. All right, next up, this is from 9 to 5 Mac, and it actually quotes something from 404 Media, but I read them a lot, so this is a little shorter anyway. And it's about Apple's Hide My Email feature, which is a great feature if it works. And apparently, right now, it's broken. So anyway, a privacy flaw in Apple's Hide My Email feature means that your real email address can be discovered. A security researcher said that tests found 100% of generated addresses allowed an attacker to reveal the real email associated with the Apple account. Tyler Murphy, who's one of the co-founders of Easy Opt Outs, who I interviewed a while back, said that he discovered and reported the issue to Apple more than a year ago, but it still hasn't been fixed and has now made the decision to go public. And this is a quote from Tyler, who says, quote, "Apple Hide My Email is leaking email addresses that are supposed to be hidden. We reported the issue and replication instructions to Apple over a year ago. We don't know why it hasn't been fixed, but we don't feel comfortable waiting any longer. Hide My Email users deserve to know that it may be possible for attackers to discover their hidden email addresses," unquote. 404 Media is not revealing the exact details of the vulnerability because it could still be exploited as of Monday, when 404 Media verified the issue with one of their own hidden email addresses. Murphy said that he reported the issue to Apple in June of last year, and the company told him it was looking into it. Apple said it had been fixed in March of this year, but Murphy found that that wasn't the case. He again contacted Apple, with the company saying it would appreciate him not revealing the existence of the flaw until it had been resolved. Apple then said it planned to address the issue in June, but since it still hasn't been fixed, Murphy says he doesn't feel comfortable waiting any longer to reveal the existence of the problem. He hasn't shared any details of the bug or how it can be exploited. And then there's one more paragraph here that's different, but also important, and something I want to make you aware of. It says, Apple recently announced that it would in the future be using a new domain, private.icloud.com, for Hide My Email addresses. Some users were unhappy that companies would be able to block this domain in order to limit the use of the privacy feature. So there's two things in there. I don't want to downplay that last part. But Hide My Email, the whole point of this is that you generate a temporary email or an email alias, I guess you could use it for as long as you wish, that you could give to somebody that would route to your regular inbox. It's an alias. So you're not giving out your real email address. You're giving out an email address that stands in for that, and one that you could remove at any time if the person you gave it to ends up spamming you with that address, for example, without you having to do anything with your regular email account. And it also prevents them from giving away your real email address or selling your real email address to some data broker. So Tyler somehow figured out a way to decloak and find your real email address behind these aliases, and told Apple about it over a year ago, and Apple has not fixed it. So that's bad. But also potentially equally bad is that Apple, for some reason, and I've read at least a few articles about this, and none of them seem to have any sort of a statement from Apple about why they're doing this. But instead of your, email alias being blah blah at iCloud.com, which is an email domain that everybody has to accept because there's a lot of iCloud email addresses out there. But now that email address, or at least maybe new ones that are created going forward, are going to be blah blah at private.icloud.com. It's different. It's obvious. So now companies who take email addresses are going to take one look at that and say, oh, no, we want your real email address. Don't give me any of this alias crap. I don't know why they're doing this. It's going to basically defeat the point of the feature. Anyway, if I find out more about that, I'll let you know. But these are both bad things. Apple, do better. All right, this next one is from 404 Media, and it's about a new patent that somebody discovered from Meta, the company that owns Facebook and Instagram. And it's super creepy and very weird. But I will say at the outset that this is just a patent. It doesn't mean they're going to do it, but this is Meta. This doesn't sound too far-fetched. So wait till you get a load of this. All right, here we go. Meta has filed a patent for a system that records your voice and surroundings all day, then uses an AI to analyze your mood. The patent's stated theoretical goal is for Meta, a company that makes billions of dollars targeting ads at its users based on their data, is to sell users a wearable that tailors workouts for them based on whether they're happy or sad. This is a company, I'm going to try to pronounce this, Patentalize. It's patent, L-Y-Z-E, so Patently's, I don't know how you pronounce that. Anyway, first noticed the patent, which was published in July 2nd, after Meta filed it back in December of 2025. The filing describes an apparatus that surveilled a user and their surroundings constantly to craft a better workout. And this is a quote from the patent application. It says, quote, "The audible communications may be associated with contextual factors such as time of day, location, user activity, or digital interaction. The audible communications may be transcribed, and an emotional state machine learning model may interpret verbal and nonverbal cues to determine emotional indicators," unquote. The more data it has, the patent explains, the better it could understand a user's moods. Another quote from the patent application, quote, The system increases the precision and reliability of emotional inference by aligning multimodal sensor inputs on synchronized timelines, which creates a novel data structure that supports richer emotional analysis. These combined features deliver a technical improvement in automated audio interpretation, enabling continuous emotional monitoring on everyday devices, unquote. The emotional analyzing AI would need far more than just a user's words to determine moods over time. A longer description of the hypothetical training data for the AI included attributes of thousands of objects, such as a user's books, personal messages, and newspapers. Another quote from the patent says, in some examples, audible communications may include speech, e.g. voice data, sighs, laughter, or other nonverbal sounds associated with an expression, an emotion, or ideas. In some examples, the audible communications may include the tones of a voice of a user while making the communications, unquote. All this data, Meta says, would be in service of tailoring better workouts. Humans, the patent explained, are simply not as good as a machine for this. Quote, personal trainers cannot provide the level of precision and guidance, such as correcting a pose and or body movement. These challenges create a need for a practical approach that uses a single device to observe movement, recommend routines, and provide corrective guidance, unquote. AI lives and dies by its training data. Many of the leading LLMs, or large language models like ChatGPT, have already scanned the entire internet and are still hungry for more. Meta's patented system would give it unprecedented access to movements, moods, and interactions of its users. Giving the user workout suggestions in return seems a paltry compensation. A wearable device that records every sound you make and transcribes it for an LLM while monitoring your exact location is a privacy nightmare. It's also a fear that underpins many people's concerns about big tech. A wearable that records your every word and divines your emotions would also, necessarily, record your interactions with other people. Meta has pioneered non-consensual public recording with its smart glasses, so it's not shocking to see it file a patent that suggests it'll move further into that space. The last time Meta explicitly pursued users' emotional data, it horrified people. In 2012, the company then called Facebook conducted a study into emotional contagion using Facebook's news feed. Meta altered the feeds of 700,000 users to see if it could make them happy or sad just by tweaking what they saw online. Meta found that it could, in fact, alter people's moods if it wanted. It did this without informing users that they'd been part of an experiment. Now it's patented a device that will record your laughter and play it back to you, all in service of crafting the perfect workout routine. Again, quoting the patent, it says, quote, an implementation may show that the user laughs more often on certain days, shows improved mood after life events, or expresses more positive emotion during morning routines. The device may also provide citations to specific audio moments that support the emotional interpretation, unquote. Meta wants to tell you how to feel, and it'll use your own voice to do it. Now, this is a quote from a Meta spokesperson, Tracy Clayton, who says, quote, like other companies, patents at Meta are often filed to disclose concepts that may or may not be implemented, and a granted patent does not guarantee that Meta has pursued or will pursue the technology described, unquote. Yeah, okay. What do you even say to something like this? Now, again, I'll just say, if we ever get this AI stuff down to the point where it can all be done locally, and I absolutely own all of that data and it never leaves my device, okay, maybe I might be interested in having something monitoring me, giving me feedback that might help me be a happier person. But then you also got to realize it's recording other people too. And what are you going to do? Walk around with a big consent button on your forehead? I don't know how we do this. So we probably shouldn't. So anyway, moving on. This is from Cyber Insider, and it's really pretty disturbing. But it also goes to show that you need to protect your Signal account. It's not sufficient just to have an account. But it also shows how these accounts are really important and can be taken over. Okay, here we go. The Intercept has warned that its official Signal tip line username was compromised and used by an impersonator to pose as the investigative news outlet, potentially exposing confidential sources who attempted to submit sensitive information. Dr. Martin Shelton of the Freedom of the Press Foundation analyzed the incident and outlined several scenarios that could have allowed the Signal username to fall into another party's hands while providing guidance for journalists and organizations that rely on Signal for secure communications. Dropsite News reported that an individual had been impersonating the Intercept by controlling the Signal username previously listed on the publication's public tip page. The fraudulent account reportedly began soliciting tips from potential sources as early as February of 2026 and actively promoted the compromised username across social media. The Intercept is a nonprofit investigative news organization known for publishing reporting on national security, government surveillance, corporate misconduct, and other public interest investigations. Like many investigative outlets, it relies heavily on encrypted communication platforms such as Signal to allow whistleblowers and confidential sources to submit sensitive information securely. According to Dropsite News, the impersonating account responded to lawmakers and federal officials approximately 100 times between April and May, while advertising the compromised Signal username as a contact method. During much of that period, the same username reportedly remained listed on the Intercept's official tip page, increasing the likelihood that prospective sources would unknowingly contact the impersonator rather than the newsroom. On June 30th, the Intercept publicly acknowledged the issue by posting updated contact information on X, or Twitter. The publication instructed users not to use the previous Signal username, theintercept.01, and instead to contact reporters directly or use the replacement Signal account, theintercept_tips.01. The outlet did not disclose how the original username was compromised or provide specific guidance for individuals who may have previously communicated with the fraudulent account. That seems weird, especially for them. Shelton noted that while the exact cause of the incident remains unknown, there are only a handful of plausible explanations. Signal accounts that remain inactive for extended periods may eventually be deactivated, making associated usernames available for registration again. Similarly, changing a Signal username may make the previous one available to others after a short period. Another less common possibility is a SIM swapping attack, in which attackers hijack a victim's phone number to recover control of a Signal account. The report cites Signal's source code as indicating that inactive accounts may be automatically deactivated after approximately 120 days, potentially releasing their usernames for reuse. If an organization has widely publicized a Signal username on websites, social media profiles, presentations, or printed materials, losing control of that identifier can enable convincing impersonation attacks that are difficult for potential sources to detect. The Freedom of the Press Foundation recommends several measures to reduce the risk of similar incidents. Organizations should keep Signal accounts active to avoid automatic deactivation, avoid changing publicly advertised usernames unless absolutely necessary, secure mobile accounts with carrier pins to help prevent SIM swapping attacks, and enable Signal's registration lock and PIN protection to prevent unauthorized account recovery. So, really, honestly, it's that last paragraph that I wanted to make you aware of. If you're using Signal, you got to keep using Signal. Don't let it go inactive, or you might lose your username. But this is particularly important for any organizations who have advertised their Signal contact information and use it for purposes like this, where it's really important, and it would be really bad if someone were able to hijack or take over that account. I would love to understand what actually happened here. I can't imagine that the Intercept would have let their Signal account go idle. So I'd still be interested to know how this happened, but it did happen. And certainly if you're a whistleblower looking to contact the Intercept, make sure you're using their new Signal handle. All right, next up, another creepy story brought to you by capitalism. This one's from a website that I'd never heard of called Ad Exchanger, and I think this is a site for advertisers. So this group is probably thinking this is a good thing, but let me just read it. There are two things Papa John's doesn't like to see: an apostrophe in its name and a hungry customer who's out of groceries. The pizza chain recently tapped NBC Universal, Instacart, and a Dentsu-owned media agency, Carrot, C-A-R-A-T, for help reaching consumers when they're low on groceries, and thus more likely to be swayed by a mouth-watering ad. The idea is to reach hungry consumers by, quote, knowing what is in their fridge without being too creepy, unquote, says Carrie Drinkwater, Chief Investment Officer at Carrot. To achieve that goal, NBCU and Instacart created a custom audience of shoppers who regularly purchase grocery staples on Instacart, such as eggs, milk, meat, and produce. Based on that data, Papa John's can determine which days of the week certain consumers are likely to run out of groceries and serve them an ad on NBCU streaming content accordingly. The brand served custom creatives, and I guess that means ads, to consumers based on their food preferences, such as whether they buy meat regularly, with QR codes and calls to action such as light on groceries or empty fridge. Papa John's Empty Fridge campaign ran from late April through last weekend on NBCU streaming supplies. Boy, these are weird marketing terms, such as Peacock, NBC Sports, and NBCU content across streaming distributors. While it's too soon to digest the results, Papa John's knows what it's looking for. Instacart's data is just one ingredient in Papa John's recipe for reaching hungry consumers with a bare fridge. Another ingredient is the brand's own understanding of its target audience, pizza lovers. Pairing these data points together is how Papa John's homes in on consumers who are most likely to order pizza when prompted. Papa John's looks at pizza lovers in 3 categories. The first type is people who have designated nights for ordering delivery, such as weekly movie or game night. The second group plans pizza for bigger celebrations like birthday parties. And the last, but not least, is the unpredictable pizza lover who orders in spontaneously, such as when their fridge is empty. These hungry and impressionable pizza lovers are the group that Papa John's is most focused on because the brand believes its ad is more likely to perform if it's served at a time of need, Bromberg said. When people are low on groceries and running out of steam at the end of the week, she said, that moment is when Papa John's wants to swoop in with an ad that's tailored to their preferences. For example, Papa John's served different creatives, what a weird term, to consumers based on their shopping patterns on Instacart. These creatives showed products heavy on particular flavors or ingredients, such as meat, veggies, and garlic. One of our key business challenges, Bromberg said, is figuring out how exactly to identify and take advantage of the spontaneous moment where consumers make that decision to order pizza. With Instacart data indicating who has an empty fridge and when, NBCU helped Papa John's run the appropriate creative within the streaming content that those empty fridge households are watching, says Ann Schneier, EVP of Agency Partnerships at NBCU. Yeah, okay, so this is where we're at, folks. The more we can surveil you, we can figure out when your weakest moment is for the product that we want to sell you. And doing this from all sorts of different angles, getting data points from different places you would not be thinking about, and finding ways to get you those ads. I'm sorry, but there's no not creepy way to do that. All right, so we actually have some good news stories this week, and let's start with this one. This is from Engadget. Opera, which is a web browser that you probably have never heard of because I think its market share is like 2%. But if you have, good for you. Anyway, Opera has introduced a new safety feature that protects against malicious clipboard attacks, the browser company announced. This is a quote from Opera, quote, With Paste Protect, Opera becomes the first major browser to include a native protection and warning system against ClickFix-based attacks, which accounted for over half of malware loading cyber attacks in 2025, unquote. What the heck is ClickFix, I hear you asking? Seraph Secure describes it as a surprisingly ordinary attack that doesn't rely on scary warnings. Often under the guise of a CAPTCHA prompt, ClickFix copies malicious code into your computer's clipboard when you click the I'm not a robot or similar button. It then brings up a set of instructions ostensibly to complete the verification, like telling you to press Windows plus R, the Windows key plus the R key, to open a run dialog, Control V to paste the bad code, and Enter to run it. The copied code will often tell your computer to go to a specified website, grab a file, and run it with the code that includes commands like mshta, and I'll come back to that in a minute. It can also be hidden or disguised by extra characters, in other words, obfuscated. Once you've run the code, the command can run info-stealer malware like LumaStealer that can compromise saved passwords, browser autofill data, cookies for auto logins, and more. This could be stopped at the source if your browser spots the malicious command before it enters your clipboard, and that's where Opera's Paste Protect feature comes in. It detects malicious scripts tailored to Windows, macOS, and Linux, blocks the copy action, and warns you about what just happened while flagging the address bar with a red icon. Users can see the first 120 command characters and mark sites as safe in the case of a false positive. If you're unfamiliar with the Opera browser, it's best known for efficient memory use and free built-in VPN. Paste Protect is activated by default, which is great, but you can toggle it on or off in the browser under Settings, Privacy and Security, Paste Protect. If you're an Opera user, the update should be rolling out to your region soon. All right, so a couple things there. First of all, MSHTA, I had to look this up, is for a Microsoft HTML application host, and the reason that acronym doesn't line up is because .hta files are HTML applications. That's where the HTA comes from, and MS is from Microsoft. So basically, it's yet another way to run commands on your computer. If you're not familiar with running commands at your command line at a text prompt, that was the old school way of doing things on computers. And because most people never do this and don't really understand what these things are about, that is why this ClickFix attack works so well. They trick you into clicking a button which behind the scenes on the web browser copies something to your clipboard as if you had copied it yourself. So it puts this malicious command in your clipboard ready to be pasted somewhere. And then it tells you to open up a terminal window. On Windows, that's the Windows plus R. But there are other keyboard commands that could be used to just pop open a terminal window. Paste the results, which, remember, it copied for you. You didn't have to copy it yourself. Paste the results, this malicious command, into that window and hit enter, which will run the command. This has become a very popular technique for infecting people with malware. And so what Opera is trying to do is it's trying to recognize when you've copied something malicious. Now, I don't know how good this is going to be because it's really easy to obfuscate these commands to the point where even a trained eye like myself would not be able to look at it and tell what it's doing. Now, I could immediately tell that it looks fishy because the process of obfuscating something makes it look like garbage. But if you're not paying attention, you're going to a website that says, to prove that you're a human, do this for me. Some people are just going to do that. And then at that point, they are now infected by malware. So I appreciate the effort, but honestly, this really needs to be done at the operating system level, not at the browser level. And Apple, to their credit, has done this. I don't know how effective it is because I haven't really run into this much myself, but if you try on Apple macOS now, if you're up to date on your software and you put something on the clipboard and try to paste it into terminal, it will warn you and block it, which is really where this needs to happen. And Microsoft really needs to get off their butt and do this in Windows as well. But, hats off to Opera for at least trying, though I don't think this is the right place to do it. And I don't know if I really want my browser looking at everything I copy. But, again, give them an E for effort here. All right, so some more good news. This is from the Hacker News, and it's about disrupting another proxy network. Google has significantly degraded NetNut, that's N-E-T-N-U-T, one of the biggest networks that turns home devices into rented relays for other people's traffic. Working with the FBI, Lumen, and others, Google's Threat Intelligence Group, or GTIG, said this week that it had reduced the network's pool of usable devices by millions. Google identifies NetNut, also tracked as POPA, or POPA, P-O-P-A, as a network spread across home devices worldwide, including smart TVs and streaming boxes, and GTIG estimates the network holds at least 2 million devices. If one of those devices is in your home, strangers can route their own traffic through your internet connection, and your address gets the blame for whatever they do with it. A residential proxy network sells access to real home internet addresses. Attackers pay to route their traffic through your connections, so it looks like ordinary home browsing, not the data center traffic that security tools tend to block. To build that pool, operators need their code running on home devices. Some devices ship with it pre-installed on cheap off-brand hardware. Others pick it up when someone installs a free app that hides it. Once it's running, the device becomes an exit node, a doorway that other people's traffic flows through. Google says an exit node brings outside traffic into the home network, giving attackers a foothold to reach other devices on it, in other words, on your home network. Some of these home gadgets have also been pulled into large attack botnets such as Mirai and Badbox 2.0. In a single week in June, GTIG counted 316 distinct threat clusters using suspected NetNut exit nodes, including cybercriminal and espionage groups, to hide their real location and run password guessing attacks. Unlike most proxy botnets, NetNut traces back to a public company. In June, researchers at Quarium, Synthient, Nokia Deepfield, and Spur tied Popa to NetNut. NetNut is a proxy provider owned by publicly traded Israeli company Alarum Technologies. In a controlled test, Synthient said traffic it sent into NetNut's commercial gateway came out through a device it had enrolled in Papa. Alarum rejects the botnet label. It calls the research demonstrably inaccurate assertions and flawed deductions rather than verified facts, and says its software is for consented bandwidth sharing that does not compromise the devices it runs on. The researchers' testing complicates that defense. Synthient reported that none of the more than 20 apps it examined actually showed users a consent prompt. Cutting off NetNut is messy by design. NetNut runs a reseller program that lets other companies sell its network under their own brand names. Google says it has high confidence that many popular, seemingly separate proxy brands are really reselling the same NetNut pool. So, a single takedown ripples across a lot of brands that look independent but are not. That is also why Google calls this degradation, not a kill. It says its earlier action against a similar IP idea, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, we talked about this when this happened, showed these networks can look resilient. Operators start buying capacity from rivals, in effect becoming resellers themselves. Real, lasting damage, Google says, means going after several connected providers at once. The single clearest warning sign is an app that offers to pay you for your unused bandwidth or sharing your internet. This is one of the many ways these networks grow. Beyond that, here's some tips. 1. Stick to official app stores and check what permissions a VPN or proxy app is asking for. 2. Keep built-in protections like Google Play Protect switched on. And 3. Buy streaming boxes and smart TV hardware from known manufacturers, not no-name brands. The demand for these home addresses does not disappear when a network goes down. It just moves. For defenders and platforms, the next signal to watch is whether NetNut-linked traffic resurfaces under reseller brands. Okay, so we talked a lot about residential proxies in the last news show, and I think this article did do a better job of kind of explaining at a high level what these things do. But again, you've got some sort of a device in your house that has been compromised. Either it came that way because it was a cheap no-name device with this, that had this kind of proxy software built into it. This has been very common with really cheap Android-based streaming boxes, for example. But it's also part of applications that you might be running on your smart TV, for example. They are supposed to have some sort of a pop-up that tells you what they're doing, but it's usually language that's not easy to understand, like that was quoted here. Allow us to use your unused bandwidth or share your internet. If you start seeing language like that, absolutely say no. Now, they might couch this like, okay, if you don't do that, we're going to show you ads. But if you don't want to see ads, let us use your bandwidth. But just understand that what they're letting you do is become a stepping stone for probably malicious traffic, allowing your home network and your IP address to be used to attack other systems or other nefarious things. You do not want to do that. I'm actually going to be talking with Dan Gooden about this soon, so we're going to dig into this more deeply. All right, another really big win from the Supreme Court of the United States, which those seem to be few and far between these days, but this is a good one. This is from the website Fight to Repair. For years, farmers have been told that they owned their tractors, but not really. If a machine threw an error code, needed a software reset, or required certain electronic repairs, many John Deere owners found themselves waiting for an authorized dealer, even when they had the skills and tools to do the job themselves. During planting and harvest season, those delays weren't just frustrating. They could cost thousands of dollars. This week, that changed in a big way. The Federal Trade Commission, joined by the Attorneys General of Arizona, Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, announced a settlement with Deere & Company that dramatically expands farmers' ability to repair their own equipment. Deere is also subject to strict reporting and oversight requirements to ensure its compliance with the stipulated order. The term of the order is 10 years and may be extended if Deere violates its terms. Compliance with the agreement will be overseen by the FTC and state attorneys general. The agreement means access to tools for reading and clearing fault codes, pairing replacement electronic parts, and restarting machines after emissions-related shutdowns, and accessing the technical documentation needed to diagnose and complete repairs. Just as importantly, Deere is prohibited from retaliating against farmers or independent repair providers who choose to use these tools instead of the dealership service. Repair advocates caution that while the agreement looks robust, more time is needed to review the language of the agreement. Also, restrictive repair monopolies are not exclusive to John Deere, but other manufacturers are not named in the FTC settlement. So I talked to you recently about a company in Canada who's producing basically what they call dumb tractors that allow you to do what this agreement is basically allowing these people to do. It's a good thing. The right to repair is very important, especially for machinery that costs so much money and is so vital to the businesses of the people who own them. This has really gotten out of hand. But like it says here at the end of the article, this is not the only case like this. There's many, many other situations like this out there that need to be fixed. Apple was actually pretty bad about this for a while, but has, I think because of legal pressure, also made it a lot easier for people to repair their own devices and for third parties to repair Apple devices. We're very slowly getting there. It'd be very nice if we just had a global law that made these sorts of things required for everybody. And maybe we'll get there, but this was a big one. John Deere was a big, big problem. So big win for the right to repair movement and farmers in general. All right, and one more, and it's also a good story. This is a big win for the Fourth Amendment, and it's really amazing that it came right on the heels of my interview with Nate Wessler. The Supreme Court on Monday, and I think this was 2 Mondays ago, ruled that police use of location history data pulled from individuals' phones by tech companies should be considered a Fourth Amendment search and requires a warrant. The decision is a significant win for privacy and civil liberties advocates who have long held that so-called geofence searches are unconstitutional, or at least should be more heavily scrutinized and narrowed. Geofence searches occur when police ask tech companies to produce a list of every phone located in a particular area during a specific time frame, allowing police to pinpoint potential subjects when they have none. The case centers on Okello Chatri, a Virginia man who was charged with bank robbery in 2019 after police nabbed him by using Google location history records. While police had a warrant for the search in this case, a lower court ruled that a warrant wasn't needed at all. Chatri's lawyers challenged that contention, arguing that the search was unreasonable and should not be allowed even with a warrant. The High Court on Monday sent the case back to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit for a ruling on whether the Chatri warrant was unreasonable, sufficiently narrowly tailored, and otherwise constitutional. The appeals court could now set strict parameters for when and how geofence warrants are executed. In addition to establishing that geofence searches require warrants, the court also was skeptical of the government's position that its search was protected by third-party doctrine, which we talked about with Nate, if you recall, an argument that law enforcement has made to defend geofence searches, asserting that because individuals choose to share information with Google, it is no longer private. And this is a quote from Greg Noheim, Director of Security and Surveillance Project at the Center for Democracy and Technology, who says, quote, "The big deal is that the court is saying that when a person uses their cell phone in the way people in modern society use a phone, they don't forfeit their Fourth Amendment rights. The court also dealt a strong blow against the legal doctrine that says that if you share information with a third party, such as Google, Apple, or Microsoft, the government can compel the disclosure of your information without a warrant. The court is removing brick by brick the foundation of this third-party doctrine," unquote. While Google no longer stores location history, making it impossible for law enforcement to obtain it, a host of other companies track and store user location, including Uber, Lyft, and Apple. The decision, therefore, has been a big impact on law enforcement, which sometimes does not use warrants to compel big tech companies to disclose such data. Had the court ruled that geofence searches are not protected by the Fourth Amendment, experts predicted a surge in law enforcement use of the tool, as well as more aggressive use of other kinds of reverse searches, such as keyboard inquiries, to see lists of names searching specific terms on Google. And this is a quote from Andrew Guthrie Ferguson, who's a George Washington University law professor. Quote, "Chatri is a major win for Fourth Amendment privacy, and requiring a warrant to obtain location data from your cell phone, the Supreme Court upgraded the Fourth Amendment to meet the digital age," unquote. Ferguson, also the author of the book Your Data Will Be Used Against You, added that the court's flat rejection of the government's argument that location data can't be collected without a judicial warrant sends a clear signal that it treats digital privacy seriously. In a 6-3 vote, the justices held that searching someone's Google location history is akin to searching private papers and journals, which is expressly prohibited under the Fourth Amendment absent a warrant. The opinion noted that Google repeatedly prompts users to turn on location history, and even cautions Android users that their phones will not work correctly with it turned off. Location history also remains active regardless of whether the user has a Google app open, and even when a phone is not in use, the opinion said, noting that even if the user deletes the app for which they turned on location history, Google continues to capture movement history unless a user affirmatively stops it. The precision of location history searches, as well as the fact that police can make them retroactively, is also an important consideration, the opinion said, noting that location history pinpoints location within around 20 meters, records it about every 2 minutes, and can even see what floor of a building an individual is on by capturing elevation. So that is a big win. It will remain to be seen how that will be applied. But what that means to me is that now groups like the ACLU and the EFF and EPIC and CDT and many others can now lean on this to lock down many other abuses of the collection of location data. And hopefully we can undermine this whole third-party doctrine BS. So it's a big win. Again, it just remains to be seen how this is actually going to be applied and play out in the real world. Okay, and that brings us to our tip of the week. And the tip of the week this week is not your usual tip of the week. The tip of the week usually corresponds almost directly with the blog article that I just wrote on my website, and this is no exception. But what I'm really doing this week is I'm kicking off the countdown to the 500th podcast episode. I have been thinking about this for months and honestly getting kind of stressed about it. I really wanted to do something big, something meaningful. And I didn't want to make it about me. I didn't want to make it about giving away prizes. I wanted to actually use the occasion to do something good in the world. And so I thought long and hard about how I was going to do that. And what I really came back with was, I don't know. There are too many unknowns with this, including how much interest there will be in doing the things that I want to do. So what I'm going to be doing instead is I'm going to be using the period between now and the 500th episode to run an experiment. And I need your help. In fact, I need more than your help. I need to find people beyond my regular audience, my listeners, my readers, my followers. So I'll explain a little bit more in just a second. What I also want to make sure I call out is that I just signed a contract to make the 6th edition of my book. It's been over 3 years since the 5th edition came out, and it's really due for an update. All the screenshots I have in the book, and there are many, for macOS, Windows, iOS, and Android to some extent, all of those things get stale pretty quickly. I would have loved to actually have updated the book last year and just didn't get around to it. So now is the time. It's going to happen. I'm going to create a 6th edition of the book. I'm hoping that it will be out by December. I have to do all my writing part, and then my publisher's got to do all their publishing part. So stay tuned. I'll keep you posted on that, but it's official. I've signed the contract. I will be doing a 6th edition of the book, and hopefully it will be done by the end of the year. Now, for the 500th episode, first of all, I went ahead and bought a dedicated domain for this. If you go to FDSD, which is short for Firewalls Don't Stop Dragons, FDSD500.com, that is the official website with the countdown to episode 500. But it is also going to be the place where I'm going to be collecting various things that I'm going to be doing to celebrate this huge, huge milestone. I started this podcast over 9 years ago and have put out a new episode every single week since then, except for one. When I was transitioning the podcast from a host, I had a glitch. So it's really, honestly, an amazing accomplishment, and I'm patting myself on the back for that. But my mission, as always, with the book, the blog, this podcast, ever since I started this, the real point of this whole thing was to try to make all of us more secure and more private. Over the years, that has morphed a little bit, and in recent years, I've really been kind of focused on not just individuals, which that's important too, but our collective security and privacy, and kind of our collective resiliency. So my original idea was to try to get as many of you as possible to go out and make things more secure and private, to actually take individual concrete acts of what I kind of think of as digital citizenship, being a good digital citizen, being a good digital neighbor, to help individual people, including yourself, which actually, if you do it enough, helps all of us. But how do I incentivize people to do that? Well, that's kind of what this experiment's going to be about. So I'm going to be revealing this in phases as the time approaches. And what I really want to do is I want to figure out the best way to do this. I've got bigger plans for this that I'm not going to reveal yet, but part of what I'm doing here is testing the waters, trying to figure out what works best, how to reach more people, how to motivate more people. So we're going to start with what I'm calling phase 1, and that is protecting yourself. Pick something you've been meaning to do. Choose a few improvements that you've been wanting to make. Now, if you have my book already, the 5th edition or whatever, there's many, many tips in the book. The 5th edition has 200 tips in it, concrete things you can do. If not, that's fine. I also publish a free PDF of what I call dragon coupons. And I think there's maybe 30 or so ideas in there. But there are specific things you could do for yourself or someone else to make yourself more private, to protect your data and your devices. And of course, you can also just kind of look through my blog articles as well. Find something you've been meaning to do and do it. And start with yourself, because privacy and security are definitely me things. I also like to say they're definitely we things. But when you protect your own digital realm, you're not just helping yourself, you're lowering the risk for everyone you're connected to as well. Helping yourself is not selfish. As we all know by now, right? When the airplane cabin pressure suddenly drops, they tell you to put your own oxygen mask on first. Why? Because you can't help others if you're unconscious. And as a parent, you know that you can't be there for your kids if you don't first care for yourself. So we're going to start local, very local, just yourself. And trust me, this will make sense as this rolls out. So find something that you want to do, maybe multiple things, it's up to you. I've got a form that you can use to send me feedback, and I want to start collecting some information about these things. Like, what did you do? How difficult was it? Like, how much time and effort did it take? Why did you choose that particular task? Well, what motivated you to do it? How did you know you did it correctly? How do you test that when you're done, it's accomplished what you want to accomplish? If you were to do it again, perhaps for somebody else, was there anything you would do differently? And along the way, if you found any resources, including my own, but could be others, anything that helped you do this, tell me what those things are as well. So this is an experiment. We're going to collect some data. I want to find out what the most efficient and fun and productive way possible to help as many people as possible. And most of these things are dead simple. Most of these things are completely free. A lot of these things can be done in just a matter of minutes. There's a lot of important, simple things we can do that will protect us all. So I'm going to let this run for about 4 weeks. So I want to collect some data from you during the next 4 weeks. And then I will reveal phase 2. I would love to get your feedback. Even if you don't click the button to fill out the form for a specific thing, if you've got any other thoughts on this, you can send me an email at feedback@firewallsdon'tstopdragons.com. I promise I will read it. And in 4 weeks, I will reveal the next phase of this project. So there you have it, your news and your tip of the week. So that is going to do it for this week. This is an ambitious thing I'm doing. I really would appreciate your help. This 500th episode is a great milestone to tie this to. I'm not going to do this often, but if you were ever going to do it, please do it now. Also, help me spread the word. I want to reach other people. So send them a link to my blog post, the one I just posted, and the ones that I will be posting around this digital citizen initiative. Post it on your socials. Use the hashtag FDSD500. If you want, you can @mention me, but I'll be looking for the hashtag. Keep an eye on the official website, fdsd500.com. I will be adding some more stuff there. But I should note already that there's a link there to special FDSD500 merchandise. I hired a human, yes, an actual human, to create a really nifty update to my logo with the hashtag FDSD500. It turned out really cool. So if nothing else, go to the website to check that out. It's also the part of the artwork for today's podcast, if you can see that. But at the bottom of the website currently, there's a link to the merch site, which you can buy for a limited time only merchandise with that very special countdown logo on it. It really did turn out quite cool. Again, if you have any feedback about what I'm doing here or ideas about how I could improve this, I'm all ears. Send it to feedback@firewallsdon'tstopdragons.com. Also, by the way, if you have any comments about what you'd like to see changed or added in the 6th edition of the book, now is the time to tell me. Like, over the next 2, maybe 3 months, I'm going to be writing the 6th edition of the book. So I need to know as soon as possible. I would love to get your ideas. Hacker Summer Camp, in other words, DEF CON and B-Sides, Las Vegas are coming up very quickly. Starts August 3rd, I believe. I'll be out there for a whole week. That's only 3 weeks from now. Always look fun to Hacker Summer Camp. I may be able to line up some impromptu interviews while I'm there, though I've tried to do that in the past and it's harder than it sounds. But I will definitely be lining up future interviews while I'm there. It's a great time to network. And I've got several people on my list that I'm going to be targeting to try to lock into signing up for future interviews. So if you're going to be in Las Vegas from like August 3rd to August 9th, somewhere in there, let me know. Maybe we can actually find a time to meet up. That would be fun. So my top patrons this Thursday morning will get their next edition of Merlin's Musings. I'm going to go into some more behind the scenes stuff and details about the upcoming phases of this whole Countdown to 500 experiment, the digital citizen stuff, how I decided to do this, because it took a lot of planning and a lot of thought and a lot of brainstorming and a lot of hand-wringing, to be honest. And also probably some more details about the upcoming 6th edition of the book. So patrons, you'll see that on Thursday morning as usual. Next week, we're going to learn all about digital provenance and how we can use it to combat deepfakes and misinformation. We talked about this on the show before. It's called C2PA. That's the group that handles this provenance technology that helps you know, within certain limits, where an image came from and whether it's been altered. It's a really interesting discussion. We'll be talking about that next week. Later on, I'll be talking about internet dangers with Zach Whitaker and to Dan Gooden about residential proxies. I also have interviews lined up talking about combating supply chain threats and looking at the dark patterns for opting out. Lots of great material. So now more than ever, if you have not already subscribed, you definitely want to do that so you don't miss anything. So that's going to do it for this week, folks. I really hope you can help me out on this experiment, this project. I want to learn some things while we do this, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm hoping to do something even bigger with what we learned from this. That's going to do it for this week, everybody. Take care, stay safe out there, and until next time, as always, don't get caught with your drawbridge down.